Scott Golden here with the Wrestling Challenge Review Series returning. This is the 5/2/19 and 93 edition of things. Includes Raymond Rougeau conducting an interview with The Undertaker and Paul Bearer regarding Giant Gonzalez. Also features the announcement of the world champion Hulk Hogan would defend the title against Yokozuna at the King of the Ring in June. And Bret Hart has received the first round bye into the King of the Ring tournament. We open with the Head Shrinkers with Offa defeating Scott Bazo and Bob Young, 246. Fatu pinning Bazo off the right top off a top rope splash. Not a big surprise there. To be expected with that being the team that's there. But anyway, still a decent enough run, as it were, and ultimately leading to that run, as it were. And again, this time period for that as an organization, WWF 93, seeing a lot of changes. Obviously, Hulk Hogan leaving the organization, not exactly a strong run there, and also kind of leading things around. Jim Duggan also is in a match with Al Burke, as it were, here. And of course, Burke, kind of a guy that doesn't really need a lot of, I guess you'd say, challenges or whatever. It's certainly an interesting run there, and without a doubt, not exactly a good run if you are anybody who doesn't want to be in the position. And again, kind of getting that run off, kind of Hacksaw Duggan in a pretty good run here. And he's certainly a guy that, people want to go at pretty hard. Duggan hits the punches, kicks, body slams, basic maneuvers, nothing necessarily worth writing home about here. Hits the, I guess you'd say, the running clothesline, obviously as the final spot, but Duggan at the time, certainly not, I don't know that he was necessarily considering leaving right here, but I would imagine probably a pretty good idea of leaving right here around the time Hogan has to have been at least talking about leaving, and Duggan does hang out at least through the midpoint of the year, does what he can where he can to get some semblance of basis. Here also hits the running clothesline at that 247 mark. Then we go with Mr. Hughes defeating Mark Ming, Sidewalk Slam 148. During the bout, Slick cuts an inset promo, basically saying he wants to manage Mr. Hughes. He could change Hughes' ways. Not exactly sure that ever would have been a thing. I don't even know why that was brought up. Maybe something for Slick to do, since Slick was, how to say this nicely, kind of floundering at the time. And then we see Mr. Hughes, of course. Harvey Whippleman is his main opponent. Mark Ming, not a big deal here. Big body slam by Hughes. Hughes also kind of does the punch kick thing and eventually hits a shoulder tackle and a modified choke slam. Upcoming, Doink the Clown says he's going to face off against Randy Savage. Randy Savage basically says he doesn't agree with what Doink has done to Crush. Savage also wants to get his hands on Jerry Lawler. Upcoming local area house shows at the time. Savage still a pretty big deal here. Smoking Guns with more vignettes. They've got pop gun shooters, and they're in the middle of the desert somewhere, New Mexico, Arizona, wherever. Anyway, Shawn Michaels, your Intercontinental Champion, returning here. And Michaels, of course, having a very good match with the Tatanka at the pay-per-view, but not to be outdone. Shawn Michaels, of course, very basic stuff coming out, and pretty, simple. Brian West is his opponent here. West doesn't really pose much of a challenge for Michaels. Michaels, mocking his opponent, sends him to the outside, body slam, basic stuff, and Michaels manages to get a pretty clear victory. Says he's going to use the side suplex, does not. Instead opts for the super kick, and although that isn't his full deal, it does end up being an eventual full deal. Bret Hart basically talks about being the number one seed at the King of the Ring. Hart is pretty determined to be the first king. Mr. Fuji says that finally his man Yokozuna, 505 or 550 pounds, depending on who we're talking about, Yokozuna will in fact get the World Championship back from Hulk Hogan. Hogan cuts a promo from on set on Thunder in Paradise, promising to get rid of once and for all the mean, nasty giant Yokozuna, and again, that's from the Thunder in Paradise set. Lex Luger and Bob Backlund will be facing off in an upcoming version of Wrestling Challenge in the King of the Ring qualifier. Speaking of Luger, he's in an enhancement match here. Actually, facing off against Backlund this week. I think somebody misspoke or the graphic was wrong. Anyway, Backlund out here, and obviously contender for the King of the Ring. Backlund was not, but fans didn't know that at the time. They didn't have to buy that at the time. Not your best of matches. Luger bails out to the outside. Luger obviously out wrestled, pretty simply put. Backlund tries sunset flip and other basic maneuvers to keep Luger off his feet. Not exactly something to write home about. Luger bails out and eventually goes back in. Cuts Backlund off with a couple of cheap shots and tries to get victories there. Backlund tries the old inverted atomic drop and then a regular atomic drop for his trouble. Luger is hanging out on the ropes, basically feigning like he's really injured and isn't, but that doesn't matter to anybody as Luger eventually knocks Backlund into the middle of next week with the loaded forearm, which is still being investigated. Crush facing off against Reno Riggins. Crush here, pretty basic stuff. Riggins taking a couple of short shots. Crush hits the round the world backbreaker, and then we go to a tag team match here. Money Incorporated, your tag team champions. Coming into this part of the year, tag team champions, of course, IRS, Ted DiBiase defeating Jason Storm. Raven Clark, 304. Clark gets pinned by IRS with the running clothesline. DiBiase still hanging out on the apron more than average. I don't know when he gets hurt in the year 1993. Got to assume it's pretty close to now because DiBiase is just a lot less active than he was in previous matches, but they're still the tag team champions here. Then we move to more in the event center frame. Obviously, live event still meant something all these nearly 30 years ago. Don't mean anything now, because, I mean, honestly, very few other than children are going to go to a live event expecting anything good out of the WWF at this point. Children still will. But, you go to a TV event and you see maybe 20 minutes of wrestling in a 2.5-hour event. Anyway, Saturday Night Meadowlands Arena, the May 22nd is the show they're plugging, and Randy Savage going to be on that card with Doink the Clown, among other things. Papa Shango is promising to put a voodoo curse on whomever gets in his way of getting in King of the Ring, and that is where we close. Hacksaw Duggan and Shango will face off in the final week, and Duggan's not impressed with Papa Shango by any stretch of the imagination, from what we can tell. We'll be back with more right after this.